In fantasy football, when you are bullish on a player, you just have to leave your draft with that player on your roster because they're your guy. So we're going to talk my guys today, and a player that I know Lewis Wood, the fancy pancake himself, will agree with. Emeka Egbuka is my guy in 2025. And if you don't agree, I'm going to try to make a very good case for why you are wrong. So we've seen it on tape from his rookie profile. We've seen it in his flashes in the preseason and training camp. That short area quickness is top tier. He has top-notch yards after the catch ability, and the football IQ just makes him pro ready. Looking at the rest of the depth chart for the Buccaneers, Chris Godwin might not be back till week 5. He's not on the pup list, but it's still not looking great at the minute. And remember, he hasn't played since week 7 last year, and he's coming off multiple operations as well. Mike Evans, he's not getting any younger. We say this every single year. Well, no one gets any younger, but Mike Evans just seems to be invincible. But Egbuka should be in for elite pass catching volume. Let's look back to last year, though, 2024 at the Bucs. Baker Mayfield, he woke up dangerous many years ago. He was dangerous all season last year. So third most passing yards of all quarterbacks, joint second most completions of all quarterbacks, and joint second most touchdowns as well. I think that I'm fairly confident with Egbuka getting 85-ish receptions, just over 1,000 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. I rest my case. Where he's going at the minute, wide receiver 42. We've got wide receiver 28. Is an absolute bargain for me, and I try to grab him wherever I can. Unfortunately, a lot of other people are starting to think that way as well. If I've convinced you, if I have not convinced you, come back at me in the comments below. But Ed, have I made a solid enough case for why Emeka Egbuka is my guy? I feel like I've spoken about him like he's actually my guy.
Yeah, I think there's so many things in his favour. Pre-draft, we talk a lot about landing spot dependent, and Egbuka has certainly ended up in a great landing spot. He as you've touched on, Baker was elite last year, especially from a fantasy point of view, and the Bucs generally are a more pass-heavy than a rush-heavy offense. So he'll definitely get the targets. Of course, there's the unknown at NFL level. He's produced at college level, so there is that slight question mark. But I agree with you. I think he is pro ready, and I think he will slot in very ticely. Godwin and Mike Evans are brilliant receivers, and if they're both fit, then that affects Egbuka. Of course, it does. But I agree. I think I can only see his ADP dropping as we approach the season with whatever drafts are left. But yeah, I can't see him being a bust. You're welcome to clip that for at the end of the season when he's got about 200 yards. But no, I really don't think he'll be a bust. And I think he's very good value at the moment.
I mean, like you said, that landing spot dependent is in a great landing spot. At first, for redraft, it didn't look that way, did it? Because all the news early in the season was, oh, Godwin signed his contract. He must be absolutely fine. But I know we said, as many other people here, it went very quiet for a very long time. So it's not a huge surprise that we're not going to see Godwin week 1. I say if he is back week 5, that's looking most likely as he's not landed on the pup list. Don't think it's going to be a year since he has seen the field of play since that injury as well. So he's not going to hit week 6, the Chris Godwin of old, the top tier Chris Godwin. Yes, he's still going to attract targets, but I feel Egbuka's got a period of time there to stake a claim to a solid role. Speaking of staking claims to solid roles, a player that I think their route to being the target hog on their team is fairly clear, and that is your first my guy, Ed. Who is it?
Yeah, I feel a little bit dirty saying this. In that my first my guy is somebody as a Bengals fan. Now he's a Steeler. I shouldn't touch with a barge pole, but I can't get away from the fact that DK I've ended up with. I was going through my teams, and obviously I'm a fancy degenerate. I've got lots of teams, and DK's ended up in a lot of them, and so he had to be my guy, whether I liked it or not. I mean, the question you've got to ask is, who else is there for Rodgers to throw to in Pittsburgh? And the answer is no one. Is the short answer. And remember, Rodgers kind of he seems to get hyper-focused on his top target. Davante Adams is the classic example of that. And then Garrett Wilson to a lesser extent with the Jets. DK's got that proven pedigree, never been under 900 yards in a season. He's coming off the board at the moment in the 4th round alongside names like Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore. You could argue, you could make a case for both of those ahead of DK, but I think you could also make a case for DK. One of the reasons being he's quite explosive. He's had 17 career games where he's had at least 20 PPR points. So he'll have those big games. There are things to consider. Rodgers and his age is a risk factor. We can't just assume that Rodgers is going to slot in at Pittsburgh and be the Rodgers of old. Well, he won't be. It could be a disaster, which would be lovely as a Bengals and Ravens fan. We'd an absolute disaster. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm getting massive value when I'm getting DK, because I think a lot of people see that he is going to be a target hog and are drafting accordingly. But he's someone that I've ended up with a lot, and as someone who I think has got a pretty solid floor with a chance to get, some big scores.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you've said. I think when we look at DK over the last few years, you've always been higher on DK than I have. Just those natural biases are creeping. It's fine for me at current cost. I reckon he'll probably average 14 to 15 points per game, probably. That's up on last year's 12.7. And I think I get drafting him, but I just think the Rodgers thing does worry me a little bit. The Arthur Smith offense does worry me a little bit as well. But anyone you're drafting down there, the other wide receiver mentioned, well, there are question marks. That's why you're drafting them around wide receiver 20 and not in the top 10. So, yeah, I think that's why I don't disagree with anything you've said. In that floor, if he does get you 14, 15 points per game, that's all right for a player you're taking at that stage of the draft. We have to keep reminding ourselves we're not always after who's going to be the wide receiver 1. That is not how you champions. When your champions are won by that depth. Yeah, and DK is a fine depth to that. So, yeah, I'm not going to contest it. And I just struggle to be as positive about DK as you are, I think, maybe. Before we move on, then, please do take a moment to subscribe, to like, and to give us a share as well. Please do click that subscribe button. We are going to be with you all the way through the season, bringing you 4 shows a week in season. So please do stick around. A player that has stuck around towards the top end of draft boards over the last few years, though, is my guy, and that is Mr. George Kittle. This was originally the graphic on screen. A previous save of this graphic said Ricky Pearsall and had a picture of Ricky Pearsall on. Then I realized I drafted a lot more of George Kittle across my teams for the exact same reasons I've been high on Ricky Pearsall. We're looking at the bonuses with George Kittle is that it gives you positional advantage in your drafts as well. So camp reports are good. He's signed a mega deal as well, so they're going to have to throw him the ball a fair bit to make him earn those millions. And I just think when you're looking at where you're getting him in the draft, so start of round 4, I just feel he's such a good value pick. So the top tier of tight ends, Bowers, McBride, Kittle, we've then said several times we see a significant drop-off then to that next point. And I think we've been the same with our tight end drafting throughout the years. We take an elite one early, or we will roll dice lower down. I'm not really interested in that middle band quite so much. I think with Brock Bowers, and now this is not negative on Bowers or McBride at all. They are both exceptional players. I would love to have on my fantasy team. But Bowers has got Gentry in town now, so they're not going to have to throw the ball as much as they did constantly last year. And Gentry is handy as a pass catcher as well. McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. going to year 2. I'd like to think Harrison Jr. is going to have an uptick in year 2 and once again, therefore, attract more targets. George Kittle, who else are you going to throw to? Debo's gone. Ayuk's broken. Jennings is injured. Pearsall, I'd say I'm not negative on Pearsall at all, but he's still to prove himself. I still see a way that Ricky Pearson is going to be a really good value as well this year, but that isn't proven. What is proven is George Kittle relentlessly catches the ball, especially from Brock Purdy. He's averaged 7 targets per game from Purdy in games they have played together. That sort of volume, that sort of consistency at tight end, you just don't get. Looking then at the draft value. So for Brock Bowers, where are you taking him? Players going just before, just after. Jacobs, London, AJ Brown. Strong case for all of those, and you're missing out on a top tier wide receivers, a top tier running back there. McBride, Chase Brown, obviously your candidate for the running back one on the whole season. JSN, T Higgins. So players, once again, it's hard not to take at that point when you're looking at what you're building for your team. George Kittle, still big names, but Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Marvin Harrison Jr. There's question marks around all of those. I've just said Marvin Harrison Jr. We're hoping Kickson has that big year this year, but it's not a guarantee. Nothing's a guarantee, but that is a bigger red flag than some of the other we may have over other players. So I think if you're waiting past Bowers, past McBride, you're potentially getting the safest tight end this season at a cheaper price. There is my case for George Kittle, Ed. He is my guy for this year as well, especially at tight end. Have you found yourself of much of him in drafts you've not been with me in?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think the reason you've got a lot of him is because I've missed out. I think Kittle's absolutely rock solid. He's definitely in that top tier. I think that says a lot. There was kind of maybe a couple of seasons ago where Kittle dropped down the rankings, and people were a bit skeptical about whether he still had it, I guess. But you touched on his relationship with Brock Purdy, and I think that's crucial. He's such a reliable target for Brock Purdy, who isn't a top-tier quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but he gets the job done, and he fits that scheme really well. So I just don't see how Kittle lets you down. He is a target monster. He doesn't have the competition, a bit like DK. It remains to be seen about Pearsall. I think we've talked, maybe not on the show, but together we've talked about Pearsall a lot, and there's a lot of hype around Pearsall this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But I don't see a world where Kittle isn't an elite tight end yet again.
No, and should you take Brock Bowers over Kittle? Yes. Should you take McBride over Kittle? Yes. But it's the draft price that really makes Kittle so appealing and why he's found himself in so many of my rosters. Your next pick, Ed, is a player I am genuinely really excited. I feel like we've spoken about him quite a bit throughout the pre-draft process and then beyond. So our second rookie, who is your next my guy?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around this guy, and we're talking about Cam Skattebo. There's a lot of hype about him, and it's going to be really interesting to see how things pan out for him. I couldn't believe how many leagues I ended up with him. We're getting into double figures. I didn't realise I was that fixated on him, but I am. And when I was putting my notes together, I was starting to doubt myself because I was starting to think about Tyrone Tracy. Who is his competition? Now, Skattebo himself, selected in the 4th round by the Giants, so they haven't invested huge draft capital in him, and he's certainly not in the class of someone like Genti. The question is, can he do what Tyrone Tracy did to Devin Singletary last year and displace him? Tracy, let's talk about briefly for a moment, was excellent last season in terms of expectation versus reality. If you remove the first 4 games, he was RB21, averaging about 13 fantasy points per game. And I think it'd be difficult to argue that Tracy doesn't own the RB1 slot at the moment. I think it would be hard to say that Skattebo is going in there as RB1. I think Tracy owns that. You know, he's a solid pass catcher. But Skattebo is incredibly powerful. He's going to get goal line work. That is undoubted. And he himself was a more than acceptable receiver in college. So he will get some receiving work as well. From what I've read, pass protection might be a little bit of an issue for Skattebo. But I just think he's got a big upside. And I just think I can just see him being that bulldozer on the goal line, picking up those easy 6-pointers for those goal line pushers. So yeah, I need him to do well, to be honest, because he's talk about like normally your elite players won't let you down, but what wins you leagues is the players that you draft further down, and it's the likes of Skattebo that I need to come off for me to have a decent season. So as I'm describing it, I'm less convinced. But it's almost I'm hoping he has a good season because I'm invested in him, but I'm genuinely excited to see how he does.
That's how some of those my guy picks work, isn't it? It's players that you find you instinctively just kind of keep being drawn towards, isn't it? And I agree, at cost, he's a nice pick. For me, he's in the same sort of territory as two players I've heavily targeted in my lumps, and that's Colston Loveland and Ricky Pearsall. So that is the only reason I've not ended up with as much Skattebo. I would rather draft Skattebo than Tracy for the pure fact that Tracy, I'm not sure on either of them, and Tracy's going around earlier. I do think there is a way that Skattebo finishes the season as the more productive back on that team. That's why we put there, he's not a clear RB. Yes, he's going to the season as the RB1. We're not disputing that at all. I think it would be ridiculous to do so, but he's hardly got it on lockdown, has it? It's not kind of guaranteed that is going to be his role and that is it done. There is a way that Skattebo displaces him in that. And yeah, I think it's a really fine pick at that point, and player that I am really excited and hope we get to speak about a lot more in season as well. If you haven't already done so, please do once again subscribe, like, give us a share as well, and whilst you give us a comment in the down below, letting us know which of these players you are also high on, which of them you completely disagree on, and we are making huge mistakes on, or who your own personal my guys are. Also, next up, another player we've spoken about a fair bit, just because for me, Dak Prescott is the most value to be had at quarterback this year. His ADP has crept up very slowly through the offseason. So I'd look back at some of our, well, firstly, the notes that we did at the start of the season for other shows, and looking back at some of the early best ball drafts we did, he was going around QB 15 at that point. He's now crept up to QB 13. No, not a huge leap, but is significant as enough as a shift to show there is some momentum on his side here. I have him in almost every best ball draft I have done. That's for me, he was an absolute no-brainer as a my guy. Some of the bits when you're looking around at some of the interviews, and I know you have to take everything that comes out of training out with a pinch of salt, but Dak Prescott is talking like a player with a point to prove in preseason. He's always just coming off a bad season with injury, and a bad season with injury always seems to just follow an amazing season where everything's kind of linked up together for him. But the situation is coming into this year is far better. He's got Lamb and George Pickens now, and George Pickens just feels like a great fit for Dak as an extra weapon to have. We've always had our fun with George Pickens, but you can't, even we with our bias can't argue that is not a solid addition for the Cowboys. Javonte Williams in the backfield now. I'm not convinced by Javonte Williams. I am convinced he is better than the exhumed body of Ezekiel Elliott that was rolled out at times last season by the Cowboys, and Rico Dowdle as well. In his 5 full seasons, he has been QB7, QB10, QB2, QB8, and QB3. Don't forget, last season, we were speaking at this stage how there were concerns about him being banged up already before the season had even got underway. So the fact that he struggled then in season isn't a huge surprise as well. We don't know what's going to happen with the defense in Dallas. We don't know whether Micah Parsons is going to be there. He seems very adamant that he's on his way out to turn down that huge contract as well. So we could have a situation where Dak has simply got to throw the ball a hell of a lot on offense this year as well. No, he is not that top tier runner that we saw earlier in his career. But that's not, we're not drafting him as QB 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're drafting him as the first of the backup quarterbacks in many situations. So yeah, I'm really happy taking Dak ahead of ADP. I have taken him in lots of different places, and if you are getting him, if you draft as such your backup quarterback you've got on the bench, I think you could do a hell of a lot worse, and I think you could find yourself plugging him every single week and being very happy with that. I'm going to go, I don't think it's a hot take. I'm going to go for a reasonably spicy take. I don't see Dak Prescott not being a top 10 quarterback this year if he plays a full set of games. Am I getting carried away?
You literally just took the words out of my mouth. He is an absolutely nailed on top 10 quarterback in fantasy, in my opinion. You know,
are we clipping that as well?
Sorry?
Are we clipping that as well?
Yeah, clip that as well. Yeah. Provided he's fit and firing with the weapons he's got, he's proved it in the past. Yes, last season was disappointing, but there were other issues there. And, you know, he's got CD Lamb as his wide receiver one, for goodness sake. So, yeah, I would even go as far as saying I'm pretty confident he'd be a top 8 quarterback. I think that's how good he is. And he's someone that I've tried to get. And I think both of us drafted a similar way and tend to take quarterbacks slightly later. So we're often competing for Dak. But I don't see how he isn't a top 10 quarterback. You know, I think, you know, as much as everyone loves to hate the Cowboys, I think we need a fit and firing Dak in the league. So let's hope he does have a good season.
It does seem a little bit strange to me that people's consensus is that CD Lamb is tier 1 or 1B of wide receivers this year. That George Pickens is being slept on is going to be fantastic this year and have really good volume. Those two things don't both happen if Dak's rubbish all year. So I think it's quite trendy to dislike Dak at the minute. I think is part of it as well. But yeah, I can't work out why you say that. I can't work out where my line is to make his finish a hot take for the year. Maybe we'll work on that for our hot take show next week. Finally, then, another shout out to Lewis with Fantasy Pancake, who was due to be joined today. Unfortunately, hasn't. So get well soon, please, Lewis. But fortunately, his first pick was Egbuka, who is definitely a my guy candidate. Tony Pollard, who was his other pick, also fits that bracket for us as well, doesn't he, Ed?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I think Lewis made this pick before Ty Spears was put on IR. So since then, he's become even more just a brilliant value pick. Now Ty Spears is on IR. I mean, he's going in the 6th round of drafts, and he's the unquestioned lead back in Tennessee. So to get a guaranteed RB1 in the 6th round is just insane value. He's been a really consistent running back over the last 3 years, 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons with the Cowboys and then the Titans last year. Also, last year he was involved in the pass-catching game. He caught 41 passes for 238 yards last season. Got a great stat as well. In games last year without Spears, he handled 82% of Tennessee's non-QB rush attempts, which was the highest in the league. And in those games where Spears was missing, he also averaged 24.2 touches in those games. So he's going to be an absolute workhorse. There's no competition until Spears is back. Behind him are Kalel Mullings and Julius Chestnut. No,
what a name. What a name.
Yeah, great names, but names that I've never heard before in my life. Tennessee have got a slightly improved O-line, which will help him. And you could argue, even though he's a rookie, they're going to have an improved quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. So I think I could see him being, now with Spears going down, we don't know how long he's going to be out for, but I could see him comfortably being a top 20 running back. So yeah, I think, well done, Lewis. He is a great choice as a
Yeah, and we've got him there as our projection of RB25. I think that's something that I would revise in our rank as well. I think top end maybe 17, 18. It's kind of where off the top of my head I'd be thinking at the minute. The workload is what did him in last year, because the answer was Pollard or nothing for the Titans at points last year. And he just struggled with kind of wear and tear towards the end of the season. You're looking this season, though. So, yeah, you said Spears injured. The offense should improve. Cam Ward, if he is what we hope he is, that's a massive boost for Pollard as well. The O-line's had an upgrade. That's going to help him. I think if his goal line work goes up as well, he should easily return on that draft price and then some. So, yeah, Topa is not a player I've ended up with a lot of. And perhaps when I've not looked at who's going around the same point, it's probably that sort of factor for me as well. But he's certainly not a player to be sniffed at. And I think, is it his age? Is it the Cowboys? Is it the fact that the kind of we said they were sneaky good in 2012. The idea of being sneaky is a lot of people didn't notice that. He just does feel like an unsexy name that people aren't prepared to go for at the minute, which is providing that value. Yeah,
Titans as well. I think that's part of it, isn't it?
I mean, everyone hates the Titans. I hate the Titans. Yeah, so they are 6 players that if you are not drafting in leagues with us, you should absolutely be prioritizing in your drafts. We'll be back in a few days with our hot takes for the 2025 season. And then we'll also be joined by Byron of the Good Teams Win, Great Teams cover for our Sunday Night Bet Club 2025 season preview. But I think that's us about done, is it not, Ed?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
So that's all from me. It's all from Ed. Farewell, goodbye. Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.